Mecha Musume kits or Mecha Girls kits are being released by several manufacturers and they are gaining more and more in popularity. I can see why, since they have certain charms that us weebs are looking for. Even Bandai have jumped into the bandwagon, their latest 30-minute sisters being great, cheap fun in typical Bandai style. Yes, I have built this with Shada, but I lost a lot of video footage so I'm unable to make the usual video. I'm sorry. A lot of Gunpla builders have started building these Mecha Musume kits, and there lies a problem. While these Mecha Musume kits have armors that are very mechanical in nature, they also have a lot of parts that are biological in nature for good reasons, which can be a little different when it comes to painting, especially with a skin tone. Hello YouTubers, my name is Eggy and welcome to my YouTube channel. For today's video, I'm going to show you 3 different ways you can paint the skin tone on your Mecha Musume kits. Before I begin, please understand that these 3 techniques I'm going to show you are the techniques that I use frequently and are not the only way to paint the skin tone. Not to mention that everyone is different, so my way of doing things may not work for you. My advice is that take what you can from this tutorial, try it out, learn, and experiment to find techniques that works for you. Also, don't forget to share your wisdom. This is probably one of the most easiest and the most well-known ways to shade the skin tone on your Mecha Musume kits. The thing is, most of this Mecha Musume kit comes with a pre-colored plastic, and the skin tone on these is pretty good. It is done this way so that these kits can be built and look good without painting them. I have seen a lot of great looking Mecha Musume kits that are built without painting the skin tone, however, giving them a bit of shading goes a long way. For this technique, I'm going to use a pastel sticks and grind them into a fine powder. Pastel sticks can be found cheaply in hobby and craft stores, and some even sell powder form separately. Once I get the powder, I use a brush to rub it onto the parts to give it shading. I usually use red, brown, or mix of both to give subtle shading. I then send the parts down to 600 to 1000 grit sandpaper to give some texture so the powder can grab onto it, but it's not really needed in most cases. They go in a very opaque way and it is very easy to fade them out with the direction of a brush. You can also use a finger, Q-tip for aid with the fading. I also apply more and more pastel powder to make it darker. If you make a mistake, you can wash it off with water and start it over again, which makes this technique really easy. Once you get the skin tone you like, make sure you seal your work with a flat top coat so that this pastel does not rub off while handling. By the way, you can also use makeup kit or Tamiya weathering master to get similar results. The clear skin tone painting technique has been rising in popularity with communities that likes to paint figurines. Several manufacturers caught on to this and started to produce their own versions, including this Lascivus line from Mr. Color. I have used this before with great results and I can go on and on about it, but the bottom line is that these paints are a bit complex but produces smooth and subtle shading that a lot of people love. For Mecha Musume kits, you don't have to go full painting that is instructed by the paint manufacturers. The reason is that most of these paints require a base tone and the plastic color can be used as a base tone. I'm just going to use a clear paint to get a skin tone or subtle shading. For this technique, I'm going to use Mr. Color Lascivus CL03 Clear Pale Red. You can also use CL04 Clear Pale Orange, but I found CL03 to be more effective. To start, I mix CL03 paint with Mr. Color Thinner from a 1.1 ratio to 1.15 ratio. The ratio differs depending on the airbrush to air pressure, so start with 1.1 ratio and try it out first. For this, I made the paint a little thin because I am going to use a small needle on my airbrush. Once I get the paint ready, I load it into my airbrush and spray it onto the parts that needs to be shaded. These paints are very opaque, so you may not see the results immediately and may have to wait a bit before you see the actual results. Once the first layer is done, I give it another layer to make it darker. Do this again and again until you get the desired depth of color. Slow and steady is a key here, and try not to mess it up. Now, eagle-eyed viewers will notice that I use a lot of air pressure, causing a mess here and there. But these paints are very forgiving to mistakes, as you can see in this video. I paint over the splatter and eventually smooth it out. Now, by any chance you do make a mistake that you need to do a redo, you can strip the paint with a lacquer thinner, but lacquer thinner will damage the plastic, so it is not recommended. So as I said, slow and steady is a key. Once done, this paint will come out mostly glossy, so throw on some flat top coat to protect your work and get rid of some of the gloss. The last two techniques I showed you are basically shading using the plastic color as a base color. The last technique I'm going to show you is fully painting the kit. This is the hardest way to paint this kit, and I use this technique a lot these days. However, it is not recommended. You see, some joints in Mecha Musume kits, such as her torso or hip joints, move in such a way that they like to scrape, which is a lot different from gunpla. Some kits put a lot of thought into this, so scraping is very minimum, but fully painting kit will create more thickness on our parts, which cause more scraping to be more frequent. Even before Mecha Musume kits, when I was painting resin figures, I will paint skin tone by applying several layers of opaque color, varying in color and texture. This will make the parts more biological in nature. However, by the time I was done, there are at least 10 layers of paint, so this technique does not work well with the Mecha Musume kits. That being said, it is still doable with careful building and painting. Now, this technique that I'm going to show you is a simpler way I began by using my usual technique of painting darker tones first. For this, I'm going to use pre-made paint by Mr. Color Cutie Girl Figure Flash Color Set. You don't have to use this, and you can make your own skin tone by mixing white with brown and yellow, but this paint set makes my life easier, so I'll be using this. First, I will clean the parts with warm soapy water to get rid of any oil on the surface. Once the part has been cleaned, I will first apply the primer. Once the primer is dried, I will apply a darker, more red skin tone. In this case, I used BC02 and painted the whole part. After the dark skin tone has been dried, I'll apply the skin tone, in this case BC01. The paint is very opaque, so on the lighter part, I will apply more paint, and on the darker shaded part, I will apply less. And after careful painting, you get a very nice shaded skin tone. However, it will be a little dark because I started with a dark skin tone as a base color. Next, I mix the skin tone BC01 with a white to make it lighter. I use this paint to give it the highlights. The highlight gave it a lighter skin tone, which I was going for in this case. Once I get the desired results, I give it some flat top coat to get rid of some of the shine. Just make sure that everything is fully cured before assembling them and handling them to avoid scratching. So these three techniques are what I use the most to paint the skin tone on Mecha Musume kits. Starting from the left, the pastel powder is the most simple way to give shading. but it does give a bit of a grainy texture, which some people might find it off. Personally, I like it because this imperfection gives it more biological feel. Now in the middle is a shading with a clear paint. This gives it a look similar to what we find in anime figures, and the skin tone is very smooth, but it requires an airbrush and a very fine control of the airbrush. Personally, I think a lot of people will love this. Now the last one on my right is my fully painted part. It is the hardest and the most time consuming of the three, and it has a lot of chance of scraping. Also, the extra thickness will affect the ball joints, which can cause part breakage. Despite its downside, fully painting makes the kit unique and very expressive, not to mention it pops out amongst others. So I will continue to try and fully paint the kit. So these are the three techniques I use to paint the skin tone on Mecha Musume kits. I highly encourage you guys to try them out and find out what works for you and what doesn't. Experiment with it and find your own way and your own technique that works for you. I do hope that this video gave you enough encouragement to start painting even the skin tone on your Mecha Musume kits. You'll find that even simple shading will make your model kit look gorgeous. Right now I am still looking for different ways to paint, and hopefully I can find much simpler ways to fully paint the kit while making it unique. I will continue to experiment with different ways and hopefully I'll get better. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hit the like button if you like this video and don't forget to subscribe.